Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on Yo-Yo Store Rewind. My name is T from Tokyo-Yo. Today we're back at it with another yo-yo review. A lot of people have a lot of questions about this yo-yo, so I hope this review will help answer some of those questions. Today we're going to be talking about the C3 yo-yo design, Radius. All right, let's get into it. It's got quite the H shape here. You're going to notice that seems to have a lot of decent center weight. You've got a thicker part here near the bearing, no sense of a step up there, and then it goes up very sharply. And this rim is pretty wide. You're going to find some undercuts in here, but basically this does have a lot of rim weight, but it does seem to play with a decent amount of center weight as well. In the cup, you've got this little arrow logo that goes around the sides here, Japan Asia World Champion, obviously for Shion Araya. This is his signature model. Then in the center here, you've got the name of the yo-yo, the little imprinted signature of Shion Araya, then the C3 logo on the very bottom. But pretty simple in the cup. There's this cut I mentioned before that's going to add a little bit of extra layer to the rim weight. Then in the center here, you have this kind of button shape. Around the very edge here, it descends in, but then this little button area is slightly convexed up. The feel is quite thick. When you hold this yo-yo, you're going to find that it fits into the hand well, but it does feel like a very thick yo-yo. It's hard to explain. It's sort of blocky is the way I've tried to think about it. It's not one of those like kind of sleek feeling tiny little bimetal racers. This thing feels bigger, but not weight-wise. It's a very interesting dichotomy of design. But yeah, it does feel thick. That's the only way I can think to explain it. But at the same time, it also does kind of harken back to the butterfly shape. It's almost an organic also. If you look at it, it does have the sharp rise here, but it is almost rounded off except for these little minor cuts here. So it's quite an interesting design actually. Amongst the yo-yos that we would kind of consider performance-driven these days, this one does set itself apart and look and feel quite different than what you'd imagine for a typical yo-yo designed by a competition player. Alright, so the Radius I actually received from Yo-Yo Store Rewind for review purposes. This was the signature model and was designed by world champion Shion Araya. And this yo-yo had a lot of testing. From what I read, this yo-yo went all over the world. The prototypes went to all sorts of different players and people. They wanted to get it just right. It went through a lot of prototyping and a lot of different phases of design until Shion could decide on something that he really liked. And that's where we got the Radius from. And now that it's out, it's just one of those yo-yos that has that kind of reputation for being a beast in a competition setting, being a yo-yo that is really made for a certain kind of player. It's kind of the epitome of the signature model, really. It is designed for one player specifically. You can really see Shion Araya's play style and preferences in this yo-yo. As for how this thing plays, so it does play really light, which you might not expect. I did mention it was blocky, and I did mention it felt a bit thick in the hand, but it plays extremely light. And I think a lot of that is because of the 7075 metal. It feels a lot different than other 7075 models as well. The Top Deck and the Mantis are both 7075 yo-yos. The Stealth is a Magic Yo-Yo bimetal with 7075. The Grasshopper X and the MKT are both 7075 as well. So there's just a few. There's quite a few 7075 models out there, but I haven't played with one that feels quite like this. It's pretty interesting. It feels like, I don't know, at first I was surprised at how it played because it plays extremely light, and when you first throw it, you might not think it's a 7075, but there's kind of a sense of lightness and a sense of power that I think kind of defies the shape. You wouldn't normally look at this shape and say, oh yeah, that's 7075, because a lot of times those models that use that metal tend to push the design in some really like wacky shapes or different ways, or they tend to like, if you've seen the Top Deck, it's really smoothed out. It's almost like a bell shape. And this has that more classic shape, but it plays with the metal in a really interesting way, and it feels like the metal took advantage of the weight distribution to such a degree that it's, it feels like it's almost down to the absolute tiniest decimal that this thing was really designed. This thing was designed so carefully that, it couldn't have been done without 7075. But like I said, it does play light on the string. It moves quite quickly, which again, I was surprised by because of the shape. Slacks and whips are no problem. You can get the string in here. There's not going to be really any center drag or anything like that. It's extremely long spinning. Because of that kind of magical weight distribution that they have with this, it's a very long spinner, and it's extremely stable as well, which of course you can expect from a lot of yo-yos these days. But like I mentioned in the beginning, you're not really going to get much finger spins here, and that's just fine. I don't really think that's what the yo-yo was designed for. You can get some finger spins to work, but the engraving is going to kind of interfere with that, and with this little convex button shape here, you're not really going to be guided to any kind of finger spin, but you can get them. Grinds are okay on this. You can get your finger in here. They're not going to be the longest grinds in the world because of the shape, but the material is nice. It's kind of blasted, and that does make grinds possible with this yo-yo. As far as its weight and everything, like I said, it does move quick and smooth, which is surprising again because of the 7075 and because of the shape. Usually I find that 7075 yo-yos have a little bit more weight to them. They seem to play with a little bit more deliberation, but this yo-yo feels nimble. I don't know, it's really hard to put my finger on exactly how this thing feels. It just feels like they spent such a long time, and they did, making sure that this thing played really, really well with the metal choice that they had. And yeah, it feels quite unique. There's really no easy way for me to explain exactly how this thing feels. And that's not a bad thing about the Radius. I think the fact that it is hard to describe is kind of a point in its favor, because it's not just one of those yo-yos you can say like, oh yeah, it's this shape, it's made for competition, it's made to do this and this and this, blah, blah, blah. It feels different. And it's still, even after playing it for a few weeks, I'm having a hard time putting my finger on it. Every time I throw it, I'm like, huh, that's not exactly how I remembered it. Not to mention the response is really good on this thing. C3's response is always really nice. It's got these purple pads that match the yo-yo beautifully. The bearing is really nice. C3 uses this really cool centering bearing that has this groove in the center, so you don't have to worry about your string getting pulled onto the sides of response. It's got this really cool color too. I like the fade, the half and half fade here. It is mentioned on Yo-Yo Store Rewind's site that the fades may be a little bit imperfect because it's hard to apply ano to 7075 models. And I guess you might see some like little slight imperfections where the colors blend, but honestly, I don't think it's a problem. I think it looks just fine. And I actually kind of like this little blended area where it's silver and purple. I think that's kind of cool looking. So for me, it's not a problem at all. And in fact, I wouldn't have even noticed it if it hadn't been on their site. This does have some dings on it. It came to me like that. I didn't put those dings on it. So when I first threw it, I was kind of worried like, oh, is this thing gonna vibe? Maybe this was their sample model or something. But in any case, it's been absolutely smooth, despite the fact that it's been kind of, looks like it's well loved. It still plays just fine. The one thing I should mention about this thing, as I mentioned, it's got the nice metal, the fade, everything like that. It is pricey. If you have a chance to check it out in a store, it's probably a good idea. Or if you have a yo-yo club or something like that, give it a try, because the price is way up there. It's well over $100, so it's probably a yo-yo you're gonna wanna make sure that you have a chance to try before you buy. Because like I said, it is a yo-yo that's hard to put your finger on, but if you're a fan of Shion Araya's style and you like 7075 and you're kind of into the shape already, this might be the yo-yo for you already. You might not even have to try it out. So it's up to you. Alright boys and girls, thank you so much for watching Yo-Yo Store Rewind today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave me a like, a comment, a subscription if you haven't already. Don't forget, I'm over at Tokuyoyo. We have tutorials, interviews, unboxings, reviews. So go ahead and make sure you go over there and give me a subscription as well, if you wouldn't mind. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, have a nice day, and sayonara.